Danny Martinez walked through the busy corridor of Kepler's Gate station, carrying his worn travel bag over his shoulder. He was tired. For the past 5 years, he had worked as a mechanic on mining colonies, at the edge of known space. The work was hard and dangerous, but it paid well enough. Now, after saving every credit he could, Danny finally had enough money for a real vacation. He was going home to Earth, and for the first time in his life, he would travel in first class. The boarding area for the Celestial Dawn was crowded with travelers from dozens of different species. Danny showed his ticket to the agent at the gate and felt a small thrill when she smiled and directed him to the premium boarding line. He had never experienced anything like this before. Growing up on Earth's lower districts, luxury was something he only saw in videos. As Danny walked toward the ship's entrance, he heard raised voices nearby. He turned and saw an elderly alien standing at the first-class check-in counter. The creature was a Dractharian, one of the dragon-like species that lived in the outer systems. His scales, which should have been bright green, looked faded and gray. He walked with a heavy limp, leaning on a simple metal cane. In his other hand, he clutched a small case that looked like it held military medals. The ticket agent, a young woman with an impatient expression, was shaking her head. "I'm sorry, sir, but your upgraded ticket has been cancelled. There was a system error. You'll have to travel in standard economy class." The old Dractharian's voice was quiet but filled with confusion. "But I received confirmation 3 days ago. I have the message here. I understand, but there's nothing I can do. The system shows your upgrade was processed incorrectly. If you want to purchase a first-class ticket, I can help you with that. But it will cost an additional 2,000 credits. The old alien's shoulders sagged. "I do not have that much. My pension is small." Danny saw the military decoration case in the Dractharian's hand and felt something twist in his chest. His own father had been a soldier, killed in the border wars 30 years ago when Danny was just a baby. He had grown up hearing stories about the brave aliens and humans who fought together in those conflicts. This old veteran deserved better than to be turned away because of a computer error. Without thinking too hard about it, Danny stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help but overhear. I have a first-class ticket. Would you like to trade with me?" The ticket agent looked startled. The old Dractharian turned slowly, his large golden eyes meeting Danny's. Up close, Danny could see scars across the alien's snout and neck. Old battle wounds, healed but never forgotten. Young human. "That is very kind, but I cannot accept," the Dractharian said. His voice had a deep, rumbling quality. "You have paid for your comfort. I will manage in economy." Danny shook his head. "Please, I insist. I've been working in cramped mining stations for years. A regular seat on this ship will feel like luxury to me anyway." He pulled out his ticket chip and held it out. "Besides, my father was a soldier too. Lieutenant Peter Martinez. He fought in the border wars. If he were here, he'd want me to do this." 5. This. The old Dractharian's eyes widened slightly at the name. Something like recognition flickered across his face, but he didn't speak right away. Finally, he bowed his head slowly. "Your father's name honors you. If you are certain, then I accept with deep gratitude. My name is Vex Thor, formerly of the Dractharian Fourth Fleet." They exchanged tickets, and the agent processed the change with obvious disapproval. Danny didn't care what she thought. He picked up his bag and headed toward the economy boarding area, feeling lighter somehow despite giving up his first-class seat. The economy section of the Celestial Dawn was clean and comfortable enough. Danny found his assigned pod, a small sleeping capsule with a view screen and basic amenities. He had certainly slept in worse places. He stowed his bag and stretched out, feeling the ship's engines begin their startup sequence. As the Celestial Dawn pulled away from Kepler's Gate and prepared to jump into faster-than-light travel, Danny looked out his small window at the stars. He thought about his father, a man he had never known except through stories and old photographs. Peter Martinez had died saving his unit during a rescue operation. Danny had always wondered if he had inherited any of his father's courage. Maybe giving up a first-class seat wasn't the same as battlefield heroism, but it felt right. 3 hours into the journey, Danny went to the observation deck. A large room with transparent walls that showed the swirling colors of FTL space. A few other passengers were there, sitting quietly and watching the impossible beauty outside. Danny found an empty seat and sat down, letting his mind wander. "May I join you?" The deep voice made Danny turn. Vex Thor stood there, looking more rested than he had at the station. The old dragon had changed into simple robes that bore a small military insignia on the collar. "Of course," Danny said, gesturing to the seat beside him. Vex Thor settled down with a grateful sigh. For a moment, they both just watched the lights outside. Then the old Draktharian spoke again. "I wanted to thank you properly. What you did was unexpected. Kindness between strangers is rare these days." "You earned that seat with your service," Danny replied. "It was the least I could do." Vex Thor was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made Danny's heart skip a beat. "You mentioned your father was Lieutenant Peter Martinez of the Terran forces. I believe I knew him. Or rather, I owed him my life." Danny stared at Vex Thor in shock. The observation deck seemed to fade away around them. "You knew my father?" His voice came out barely above a whisper. The old Draktharian nodded slowly. "It was 30 years ago, near the end of the border wars. My squadron was pinned down on Tarsus 4, one of the mining moons in the contested zone. We had been sent to evacuate civilian workers, but enemy forces surrounded us. We were cut off from our ship, running low on ammunition, and I had already lost half my team." Vex Thor's golden eyes grew distant, seeing a battle from long ago. "Your father's unit was supposed to be 3 systems away, but they picked up our distress signal. Against orders, Lieutenant Martinez convinced his commanding officer to divert and help us. They came in fast, breaking through the enemy blockade. I still remember seeing those Terran dropships cutting through the smoke." Danny felt his throat tighten. He had heard the official story of how his father died, but it had always been vague. Just numbers and dates in a military report. This was different. This was real. The fighting was intense. Vex Thor continued. "But your father led his soldiers, like he had done it 1,000 times. Calm, under fire. He personally carried 3 wounded Draktharians to the evacuation point. On his last trip, he went back for a civilian child who was trapped in a collapsed building. That's when the enemy artillery struck. A long silence stretched between them. Danny had imagined his father's death many times over the years, but hearing it from someone who was there made it feel fresh and raw. "He saved my life that day," Vex Thor said quietly, "and the lives of 47 others. Without him, none of us would have made it off that moon. I am sorry you never got to know him. He was a good man." "Vex Thor. Vex Thor. Vex Thor. Vex Thor," said quietly. Danny wiped his eyes quickly. "Thank you for telling me. I've never heard the full story before. The military just sent my mother a letter saying he died in action, awarded posthumously with honors, but they never gave details." Vex's Thor reached into his robe and pulled out the metal case Danny had seen earlier. He opened it carefully. Inside were several military decorations, their metals dulled with age. "This one," he pointed to a star-shaped medal, "I received for that battle, but I have always felt it should have been your father's." They sat together for a long time, watching the colors of faster-than-light space swirl past the windows. Vex Thor told more stories about the war, about the friendships formed between humans and Draktharians, about the hard peace that followed. Danny learned that the old veteran had struggled since the war ended. His pension had been reduced twice due to budget cuts, and he lived alone in a small apartment on a frontier station. "I am traveling to Earth for a reunion," Vex Thor explained. "Every 5 years, those of us who survived gather to remember those who did not. But I must admit, I feel ashamed. I cannot afford nice clothes for the ceremony. I cannot bring gifts for my old comrades. I am just a poor old soldier now. Danny felt anger rise in his chest. This honorable warrior who had given so much should not have to worry about such things. That's wrong. You shouldn't have to struggle like that. Vex Thor made a sound that might have been a laugh. War heroes are celebrated during wartime, young Danny. But peace has a short memory. This is not a complaint, merely an observation. I am grateful to have survived when so many did not. What about you? Vex Thor asked, changing the subject. What do you do out here on the frontier? Danny shrugged. I fix things. Starship engines mostly, but also life support systems, mining equipment, whatever breaks down. I work for a company that sends mechanics to the colonies that can't afford their own staff. It's dangerous work sometimes. Equipment fails in bad ways out there, but it pays better than anything I could get on Earth. You are skilled with machines? I guess so. I've always been good at figuring out how things work. When I was a kid, I used to take apart old electronics just to see their insides. Drove my mother crazy. Danny smiled at the memory. She wanted me to go to a proper engineering school, but we couldn't afford it. So I learned on the job instead. Your father would be proud, Vex Thor said. You help people, just as he did. Perhaps with tools instead of weapons. But the principle is the same. They talked for hours that first day, swapping stories about their lives. Danny learned about Draktharian culture, their love of poetry, and star navigation. Vex Thor learned about Earth's sprawling cities and endless oceans. Despite the difference in their ages and species, they found common ground in their shared loneliness and their connection to the past. Over the next 2 days of travel, they met regularly in the observation deck or the common dining area. Other passengers began to notice the unusual friendship between the young human mechanic and the old alien veteran. Some smiled at the sight. Others whispered among themselves, curious about their conversations. Danny found himself looking forward to these meetings. For the first time in years, he felt like he was connecting with someone who understood. Vex Thor seemed to feel the same way. The old Draktharian's spirits lifted visibly. He stood a little straighter, and his eyes held more light. On the third morning of the journey, Danny woke feeling content. Just one more day until they reached Earth. He was already planning to invite Vex Thor to visit his mother. She would want to meet someone who knew her husband. Maybe they could all attend the veterans' reunion together, but fate had other plans. As Danny was getting dressed, the ship's alarms suddenly began to blare. And everything changed. The alarm sounded like a scream cutting through the ship. Red emergency lights flashed in Danny's small cabin, and he felt the floor shudder beneath his feet. The peaceful hum of the faster-than-light engines suddenly changed to a grinding, irregular rhythm that made his mechanic's instincts scream warnings. Danny grabbed his boots and rushed into the corridor. Other passengers were emerging from their rooms, looking confused and frightened. A child was crying somewhere nearby. The intercom crackled to life, and the captain's voice came through, trying to sound calm but failing. Attention all passengers. We are experiencing a critical malfunction in our primary engine systems. We have dropped out of faster-than-light travel as a safety precaution. Please remain calm and return to your cabins. Engineering teams are working to resolve the situation. The announcement did nothing to ease the growing panic. Passengers were shouting questions that no one could answer. Danny pushed through the crowd and headed toward the nearest information terminal. He pulled up the ship's public status display, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The quantum manifold regulators were failing. It was a cascading system collapse, the kind of thing that could leave a ship stranded in deep space for months, or even destroy it completely. Danny had seen this exact problem once before, on an old military transport that had been converted for civilian use. The Celestial Dawn must have been built using similar technology. Without thinking, Danny ran toward the engineering section. A crew member tried to stop him at the security door, but Danny showed his mechanic certification chip. I'm a licensed starship engineer. Let me help. The crew member hesitated. Then the ship shuddered again. Harder this time. She made a quick decision and waved him through. Engineering bay is down 2 levels. Take the emergency ladder. Danny climbed down as fast as he could. The engineering bay was chaos. Crew members were rushing between control panels, shouting readings and diagnostics. Smoke was rising from one of the main consoles. In the center of it all stood a tall, blue-skinned Centaurian wearing a chief engineer's insignia. His face was covered in sweat, and his usually neat uniform was stained with grease. "Who are you?" the Centaurian demanded when he saw Danny. "Danny Martinez, certified mechanic. I've worked on quantum manifold systems before." "What's the status?" The chief engineer, whose name tag read Cleet, looked skeptical. "Mining station grease monkey thinks he can fix a luxury liner? No offense, but this is specialized equipment. It's a Mark 7 manifold array, right? Built on a military frame?" Danny moved closer to the main diagnostic screen without waiting for permission. "I worked on these exact systems for 2 years on the colony ship Apollo's Rest. This is a cascade failure. The regulators are burning out in sequence." Cleet's eyes widened. "How did you know it was a Mark 7? "Because I can hear it. That grinding sound is specific to the Mark 7 when the quantum coils start to desync." Danny pointed at the screen. "See? The harmonic frequency is dropping on reactors 2 and 4. In about 20 minutes, they'll completely fail. When that happens, the whole array will collapse." "Can we replace the regulators?" Cleet asked, his skepticism turning to desperate hope. Danny shook his head. "Not without shutting down the entire system. And if we do that while we're in deep space, we'll never get it started again. The only option is a manual reset of the quantum field stabilizers. Someone needs to go into the maintenance shaft and physically recalibrate each regulator. That shaft is flooded with radiation right now," Cleet said grimly. "The shielding failed as part of the cascade. Anyone who goes in there would have maybe 20 minutes before they absorbed a lethal dose." Danny looked at the schematic of the maintenance shaft on the screen. It was a narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for a human to crawl through. Most of the crew were larger species who wouldn't fit, and 20 minutes of radiation exposure would mean certain death, even with treatment. "I can fit," Danny said quietly. "And I know how to recalibrate the regulators. Talk me through what you need done." Cleet stared at him. "You understand what you're saying? This would be a suicide mission. I understand. But if we don't fix this, everyone on this ship dies. Right? All 800 passengers and crew? The escape pods might work, but we're 3 days from the nearest system. Most people wouldn't survive that long, and there's no guarantee of rescue." Cleet ran a hand over his face. "I can't ask you to do this." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering." Danny was surprised at how steady his voice sounded. He thought about his father, about the choice Peter Martinez had made to go back for that child on Tarsus 4. Maybe courage ran in families after all. Cleet looked like he wanted to argue, but another alarm blared. The ship shuddered more violently, and several crew members grabbed consoles to keep from falling. "Reactor 3 is failing," someone shouted. "We're out of time," Danny said. "Get me a radiation suit and the recalibration tools. Show me what needs to be done." For the next 5 minutes, Cleet gave Danny a crash course in the specific adjustments needed. Danny listened carefully, memorizing each step. He had done similar work before, but never under these conditions. The chief engineer suited him up in the best radiation gear they had, though everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Danny was about to enter the maintenance shaft when he heard a familiar deep voice behind him. "Stop." He turned to see Vex's Thor standing in the engineering bay entrance. The old Dractharian was breathing hard, like he had run the whole way there. His golden eyes were fixed on Danny with an expression of fierce determination. "You cannot do this," Vex Thor said, moving closer. "There's no time for another plan," Danny protested. "I did not say another plan. I said another way." Vex Thor straightened to his full height, and despite his age and scars, He suddenly looked like the warrior he had once been. I will go into the shaft. You will guide me through the repairs. That's crazy. The radiation will kill you. Vex Thor's scarred snout curved into something that might have been a smile. Perhaps. But perhaps not. There is something about my people that few outsiders know. Let me tell you about the ancient gift of the Dractharians. Vex's Thor spoke quickly, his words tumbling out with urgency. My homeworld, ancient Draktharia, orbited a dying star. For millions of years, my ancestors evolved under intense radiation. We developed a biological defense, a way to absorb and neutralize certain types of radiation. Most Dractharians lost this ability over generations as we spread to safer worlds. But some of the old bloodlines, especially among the military castes, still carry the trait. Danny stared at him. You can survive the radiation in that shaft? Survive? Perhaps. I am old, and I have not used this ability in many years. It will hurt, and it may damage me permanently. But I have a chance, where you have none. Vex Thor placed a clawed hand on Danny's shoulder. Your father gave his life so others could live. He saved me, and dozens of others. Let me honor his sacrifice. Let me save his son. No, Danny's voice cracked. I just found you. I just learned about my father. You can't ask me to watch you die. I am not asking, young friend. I am telling you this is how it must be. Vex Thor's eyes were gentle but firm. My war ended 30 years ago. I have lived longer than I deserved, but perhaps the universe saved me for this moment. Perhaps this is why our paths crossed. Cleet interrupted them. Reactor 2 just went critical. We have 15 minutes, maybe less. Whatever you're going to do, decide now. Vex Thor didn't wait for Danny's permission. He started removing his robes, revealing his scarred body. Tell me what I must do, young Danny. Guide me through this task, and I will be your hands in that deadly place. Danny felt tears on his face, but he pushed his emotions down. There was no time for arguing. If Vex Thor was going to do this, Danny had to make sure he succeeded. He wiped his eyes and took a deep breath. Okay. Listen carefully. The shaft has 6 regulator stations, spaced about 10 meters apart. At each station, you'll see a control panel with 3 settings. You need to adjust the quantum alignment to match the primary field frequency. Cleet handed Vex Thor a communicator headset and a toolkit, specially sized for Dractharian claws. The old veteran took them with steady hands. 2 crew members helped him into a modified radiation suit, though they all knew it would provide minimal protection against what he was about to face. I am ready, Vex Thor said. They opened the maintenance shaft entrance. Heat and a strange humming sound poured out. The radiation counter on the wall immediately started climbing. Vex Thor looked at Danny one last time, and something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. Then the old Dractharian climbed into the shaft and disappeared from view. Danny positioned himself at the monitoring station, watching the video feed from Vex Thor's suit camera. The shaft was cramped and dark, lit only by emergency lighting that cast everything in red shadows. He could hear Vex Thor's breathing through the communicator, slow and steady. First station coming up, Danny said, trying to keep his voice calm. You should see a blue panel on your left. I see it, Vex Thor replied. His voice sounded strained but focused. Open the access cover. You'll see 3 dials inside. Turn the first dial counterclockwise until the indicator light turns green. Danny watched the video feed as Vex Thor's clawed hands worked the controls. His movements were slower than they should be. The radiation was already affecting him. But the indicator light turned green. Good. Now the second dial. Turn it clockwise. Just a quarter turn. How much is a quarter turn in human measurements? Vex Thor asked. And Danny heard the hint of humor in his voice, even now. Just a little bit. You'll feel it click. They worked through the first regulator station, then the second. The radiation counter kept climbing. Danny could see on the medical monitor that Vex Thor's vital signs were becoming erratic. The old Dractharian's breathing was getting heavier. "Third station," Danny said, his throat tight. "You're doing great, Vex Thor. Just 3 more to go. I am beginning to understand why young people do not enjoy crawling through narrow tunnels," Vex Thor said. His attempt at a joke made Danny's heart ache. At the 4th station, Vex Thor's hands started shaking. The video feed showed his scales beginning to smoke slightly, his body's radiation absorption reaching its limit. Danny saw the old warrior pause, steadying himself against the wall of the shaft. "Talk to me, Vex Thor. How are you feeling?" "Like I have been fighting for 3 days without rest, but I have felt worse. During the siege of Kalos Station, I went 4 days without sleep. This is merely uncomfortable." But his voice was weaker now, the humor forced. They completed the 4th station. Then the 5th. The ship's alarms had stopped blaring, which meant the reactors were beginning to stabilize. Just 1 more station to go. "Final station ahead," Danny said. "You can do this. Just a little further." Vex Thor crawled forward, but his movements were agonizingly slow. Danny watched the medical readouts with growing horror. The old Dractharian's heart rate was dangerously high, and his body temperature was spiking. The radiation was overwhelming even his natural defenses. "I see the panel," Vex Thor whispered. "But my vision is blurred. You must guide me very carefully." Danny's hands were shaking as he zoomed in on the video feed. "Open the access cover. It's the rectangular panel directly in front of you." Vex Thor's hands fumbled with the cover. It took 3 tries to get it open. Inside were the 3 dials. But the old Dractharian's hands were trembling so badly he could barely grip them. "First dial, counterclockwise," Danny said softly. "Take your time. You can do this." Slowly, painfully, Vex Thor turned the dial. The light flickered and then turned green. "Second dial now," Danny said. "Clockwise. Quarter turn." The old warrior's breathing was ragged. His scales were smoking more visibly now, and the video feed was starting to distort from the radiation. But he turned the dial. Click. Green light. "Last one," Danny said. "Counterclockwise, half turn this time." Vex Thor's hand reached for the dial, but his strength was failing. His hand slipped off twice. On the 3rd try, he gripped it with both hands and turned. The effort seemed to take everything he had left. The final light turned green, and somewhere in the engineering bay, alarms changed tone. The reactors were stabilizing. "It's done," Cleet shouted. "The manifold is resynchronizing." "He did it." "Vex Thor, you need to come back now," Danny said urgently. "Get out of there." There was no response. On the video feed, Danny could see Vex Thor slumped against the wall of the shaft. His eyes closed. "Vex Thor! Can you hear me?" The old Dractharian's eyes opened slightly. "Tell your mother," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "that her husband was the bravest man I ever knew. Tell her I was honored to know him. You can tell her yourself. Just come back." But Vex Thor didn't move. His eyes closed again, and the medical monitor flatlined. "Get him out," Danny screamed. "Get him out now." 4 crew members in full protective gear rushed into the maintenance shaft. Danny paced frantically outside, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. It felt like hours. But it was only minutes before they emerged, carrying Vex Thor's unconscious body between them. The old Dractharian's scales were charred black in places, and smoke rose from his skin. The ship's medical team was already waiting with a stretcher. They rushed Vex Thor to the medical bay while Danny ran after them, ignoring the shouts of crew members telling him to stay back. He wasn't going to leave the old warrior alone. Not now. In the medical bay, the doctor, a stern-looking woman named Dr. Lisa Grant, worked with fierce concentration. She hooked Vex Thor up to a dozen different machines, while nurses administered medications and treatments. The room smelled of burned flesh and chemicals. Danny stood in the corner, feeling helpless and terrified. His heart stopped twice, Dr. Grant said without looking up. The radiation damage is extensive. I'm putting him into a medical coma to give his body a chance to heal. But I won't lie to you, the next 48 hours are critical. If his body can't repair the cellular damage, there's nothing more we can do. End quote. But he has that ability, right? To absorb radiation? Won't that help him heal? See him 7. 2 have to. Maybe. I've never treated a Dractharian with this particular genetic trait before. We're in uncharted territory. She finally looked at Danny, and her expression softened slightly. All we can do now is wait. You should get some rest. I'm staying here, Danny said firmly. Dr. Grant didn't argue. She just nodded and went back to monitoring her patient. For 2 days, Danny barely left the medical bay. He sat in a chair beside Vex Thor's bed, watching the old Dractharian's chest rise and fall with mechanical regularity as machines kept him alive. Other crew members brought him food and updates about the ship. The Celestial Dawn's engines were fully repaired, and they were back on course to Earth, arriving just a day late. Word of what happened spread quickly. Passengers came by to leave flowers and notes thanking Vex's Thor for saving their lives. Danny read each message to the unconscious veteran, hoping somehow he could hear. He also found Vex Thor's personal datapad among his belongings and asked Dr. Grant if he could look through it. Inside, he found a memoir the old Dractharian had been writing, page after page of memories from the war, including detailed accounts of his time fighting alongside human soldiers. Danny found the section about his father and read it over and over, learning things about Peter Martinez that he had never known. The story spread beyond the ship, too. Someone had recorded video of Vex Thor entering the maintenance shaft, and it went viral across the galactic network. News stations from a dozen different worlds picked up the story. A human mechanic gives up his first-class seat to an alien veteran. And then, that veteran risks his life to save everyone aboard. It was the kind of story people desperately wanted to believe in. Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Veterans organizations, military officials, ordinary citizens touched by the tale. The Dractharian embassy contacted the ship directly, demanding updates on Vex Thor's condition. The human government did the same. Asking about Danny. On the morning of the 3rd day, as the Celestial Dawn approached Earth orbit, Danny was reading aloud from Vex Thor's memoir when he heard a sound. A soft groan. He looked up and saw the old Dractharian's eyes flutter open. Vex Thor. Danny jumped to his feet. Can you hear me? The golden eyes focused slowly on Danny's face. Vex Thor's voice was weak and rough. Did I complete the task? Yes. You saved everyone. The ship is fine. We're almost at Earth. Danny was crying and didn't care. You're going to be okay. The doctor says you're going to make it. Vex Thor managed a small smile. Good. Dr. Grant rushed over, checking monitors and asking questions. She looked amazed. His cellular regeneration is incredible. He's recovering faster than I thought possible. The old bloodline traits are real. Over the next few hours, Vex Thor grew stronger. He was still badly injured and would need weeks of treatment, but he was going to survive. Danny stayed by his side, and they talked quietly about everything that had happened. When the Celestial Dawn finally docked at Earth's orbital station, they found an unexpected welcome waiting. Through the medical bay's window, Danny could see crowds of people gathered at the arrival gate. News cameras. Military officials in dress uniforms. Flags from Earth and Dractharia, hanging side by side. A message came through from the station administrator. Both Danny and Vex Thor were requested to attend an official ceremony. Dr. Grant initially protested, but Vex Thor insisted he was strong enough. They brought him out on a medical hover chair, with Danny walking beside him. The arrival gate was packed with people. As they emerged, the crowd erupted in cheers. Danny felt overwhelmed by the noise and attention. Vex Thor sat straighter in his chair. trying to maintain dignity despite his injuries. A tall man in an admiral's uniform stepped forward. "I am Fleet Admiral George Parker of the Terran Defense Forces. On behalf of Earth and the Allied worlds, I want to express our deepest gratitude for your courage and sacrifice." A female Draktharian in elegant robes also approached. "I am Ambassador Kira Sheth of the Draktharian people. Vex Thor, you have brought honor to our species. We are proud to call you one of our own." The Admiral produced 2 medals from a presentation case. "By order of the Allied Worlds Council, I present you both with the Star of Valor, the highest civilian honor for extraordinary courage in the face of mortal danger." They pinned the medals on Danny and Vex Thor while cameras flashed and the crowd applauded. Danny felt like he was in a dream. This couldn't be real, but there was more. The ambassador spoke again. "The Draktharian government has reviewed your service record, Vex Thor. We are ashamed that a war hero has been living in poverty. Your full military pension is restored immediately, along with a lifetime residence in any location you choose." Vex Thor's eyes widened. "I choose Earth, near the Veterans Memorial. If possible, it will be arranged." Then a representative from the cruise line company stepped forward. "Mr. Martinez, we were deeply impressed by your technical skill and quick thinking. We would like to offer you a position as Chief Engineering Consultant for our entire fleet. The salary is 100,000 credits per year, plus benefits." Danny's head spun. That was more money than he could have made in 5 years of mining colony work. Yes. Thank you. I accept." But the most incredible moment came when a military officer approached carrying a sealed document case. "Mr. Martinez, during our investigation of this incident, we interviewed Vex Thor extensively about his service during the border wars. His testimony about your father's actions on Tarsus 4 has led to a review of Lieutenant Peter Martinez's service record. After careful consideration, the Terran Defense Forces have decided to posthumously award your father the Medal of Honor." Danny couldn't speak. He just stared as the officer opened the case, revealing the medal inside. "Your father saved 47 lives that day, and he gave his own to save a child. He deserves to be remembered as the hero he was. The formal ceremony will be held next week at the Veterans Memorial. We hope you and Vex Thor will both attend." Danny took the case with shaking hands. Tears were streaming down his face. He looked at Vex Thor, and the old Draktharian was crying too, his golden eyes bright with emotion. "He would be so proud of you," Vex Thor said softly. The ceremony continued with speeches and more honors, but Danny barely heard them. He held his father's medal and thought about the strange chain of events that had led to this moment. A simple act of kindness on a starship, a conversation between strangers, a crisis that brought out the best in both of them. In the weeks that followed, Danny and Vex Thor became famous across the galaxy. But they didn't care about fame. Danny moved his mother to Earth and introduced her to Vex Thor. The 3 of them attended his father's medal ceremony together, and there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd when Danny accepted the Medal of Honor. Vex Thor moved into a comfortable home near the Veterans Memorial and spent his days writing and meeting with old comrades. Danny visited every week, bringing his mother along. They would sit together and share meals, trading stories and making new memories. The friendship between a young human mechanic and an old alien warrior became something more than friendship. It became family. And every year, on the anniversary of the day they met, they would visit the memorial together and place flowers at Peter Martinez's newly dedicated plaque. Above them, ships from 100 worlds would pass through Earth's sky, traveling freely through the peaceful space that soldiers like Peter Martinez and Vex Thor had fought to protect. And 2 friends would stand together, remembering the past and grateful for a future that gave second chances and rewarded simple acts of kindness with incredible miracles.